Try to read a long article today. Not skim, actually read. See how far you get before your brain quietly starts pulling away. Now, most people can't make it 5 minutes before they've opened another tab, checked their phone, or started thinking about something else entirely. And then they assume something is wrong with them. Let me tell you, nothing is wrong with you. But something has changed. In the environment you live in the way you consume information, and in the habits that you've built around both. And the science on what that change is doing to your cognitive life is significant enough that I think it deserves its own video. I'll talk about what is actually happening to your attention, why the usual advice doesn't touch the root cause, and what the research says actually works to rebuild it. Let's start with the most important distinction in this video: the difference between two kinds of attention. The psychologist Stephen Kaplan at the University of Michigan described this as early as 1995. There's directed attention, the deliberate, effortful focus you use to read a complex argument, solve a problem, or hold a difficult conversation. And then there's involuntary attention, the automatic pull toward things that are novel, moving, bright, or threatening. Directed attention is finite, it depletes, but involuntary attention is almost limitless. And the reason modern technology is so compelling is that it has been engineered almost perfectly to capture involuntary attention. Short form video, notification sounds, infinite scroll, every one of these features is designed to pull at automatic attention, and it does with extraordinary efficiency. And the problem isn't that you enjoy this, it's that using those systems chronically may be conditioning your brain to prefer them. A 2009 study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences by I.L. Ophir, Clifford Nass, and Anthony Wagner at Stanford found something counterintuitive. When they compared heavy media multitaskers, people who habitually juggled multiple screens and streams, against light media multitaskers, the heavy users were actually worse at cognitive filtering. They were more easily distracted by irrelevant information, both from the environment around them and from their own mind. People who multitask the most turned out to be the least capable of managing what they pay attention to. Now, there's a caveat that is worth naming. A 2021 meta-analysis by Parry and Leroux across 118 assessments found the overall effect size linking media multitasking and cognitive control to be small. So this isn't a clean, catastrophic story, but the directional signal is consistent. Habitual media multitasking is associated with greater distractibility, and that matters. Here's something even stranger. A 2017 paper by Adrian Ward and colleagues at the University of Texas, published in the Journal of Association of Consumer Research, tested what happens when your smartphone is simply nearby on a desk while you work. Now, you're not using it, you might not even be thinking about it, but its presence still reduces your available cognitive capacity, specifically the working memory. Participants who placed their phones in another room consistently outperformed those who left them on the desk in the same room. Think about that. You don't have to be on your phone for it to tax you. The mere presence of it, the low level awareness that it's there, that there might be something to check, occupies some part of your working memory all by itself. And there's one more piece before we talk solutions. In two experiments, psychologists Andrew Przybylski and Netta Weinstein showed in a 2012 paper in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships that the mere presence of a mobile phone on a table between two people who are having a conversation has reduced the quality of that conversation. They felt less connected, less close, and the phone's presence was especially harmful when they were discussing something personal and something meaningful. Now, we have built an environment that is quietly draining our capacity for sustained thought, not just individually, but in our relationships too. So before we get to what actually helps, I want to name why most attention advice fails. Most of it treats attention like a discipline problem. You're distracted because you lack willpower. Download this app, use the Pomodoro method, log these websites, and try harder. The research doesn't support that framing. Attention is a cognitive resource, limited, trainable, and highly sensitive to your environment. Treating it as a character trait you either have or don't have is the wrong model. and it sets people up to feel like failures when white knuckling through distractions doesn't work long term. What actually works is training the capacity itself and redesigning the environment so it stops depleting that capacity faster than you can replenish it. Now, these are two different levels, and most productivity advice only touches one of them. So, let's do both. Fix number one: redesign your environment before you train your mind. Everything I just said about the Ward et al. 2017 study on phone presence that leads directly to a practical prescription, stop leaving your phone where you can see it. This sounds almost insultingly simple, but it's not about willpower. It's about reducing the cognitive overhead of resisting. You cannot unsee the phone on your desk. You cannot stop your brain from registering it. The only solution is to remove the stimulus entirely. Putting your phone in another room, not silent, not face down, actually in another room, is one of the highest leverage attention interventions that is available to you. You don't need an app to do it. The second environment fix comes from Konstantin Kushlev and Elizabeth Dunn at UBC, who published a paper in Computers in Human Behavior in 2015. They ran a 2-week experiment with 124 adults and randomly assigned them to either check their emails up to 3 times a day or check it as many times as they liked. The people who checked less frequently reported significantly lower daily stress with an effect size of about D equals 0.5, a moderate and meaningful difference. They also reported feeling less distracted. And the mechanism Kushlev describes is attention fragmentation. Every time you check email, you fracture your focus, not just in the moment, but for the period of recovery afterward. So batching your email into 2 or 3 scheduled windows instead of treating it as an always open tab is a direct structural fix for this. So step 1 before anything else: phone in another room, email in batches. Those 2 changes alone remove a significant source of ongoing attentional depletion. Fix number 2: train directed attention directly. Now, for the training side, can you actually improve your capacity to sustain directed attention? The honest answer is yes, but the evidence for different training methods varies significantly. The strongest evidence is for mindfulness. In 2013, Michael Mrazek and colleagues at UC Santa Barbara published a randomized controlled study in the journal Psychological Sciences. They gave one group of undergraduates a 2-week mindfulness training course and gave a control group a nutrition course. Afterwards, both groups took the GRE verbal reasoning session. The mindfulness group showed improved working memory capacity and reading comprehension scores, and the researchers estimated the training produced roughly a 16 percentile point boost on average. And the mechanism isn't mysterious. Mindfulness training teaches you to notice when your mind has wandered and to bring it back without judgment. So do this enough times under instruction and you are quite literally strengthening the same monitoring and redirection process that underlies sustained attention. Now the key word in that study is trained, not meditated casually, a structured 2-week program with daily practice. If you want the benefits, the research suggests you need the commitment. A neuropsychologist at Harvard-affiliated Brigham and Women's Hospital, Kim Willman, has described a simpler exercise to start. Read something for 30 minutes, setting a timer every 5 minutes. When it goes off, ask yourself whether your mind has wandered. If it has, bring it back. That act of monitoring and redirecting is the training. Every redirect is a repetition. The Harvard Health evidence also points to cognitive training, generally progressively pushing yourself to higher levels of sustained attention, whether through reading, complex problem solving, or deliberate practice in any domain. That appears to build the capacity itself. There's also a fair amount of evidence for simply consuming longer form content deliberately, not as passive entertainment, but as a practice. Read books, watch films without a phone in the room, listen to long podcasts without multitasking. So the goal isn't enjoyment, it's training your attention system to tolerate longer arcs without seeking novelty. Fix number 3: sleep is non-negotiable. In 2003, Hans van Dongen and David Dinges at the University of Pennsylvania published one of the most important sleep studies in the literature in the journal Sleep. They put participants on restricted sleep 4, 6, or 8 hours a night for 14 consecutive days. The group restricted to 6 hours per night showed cumulative neurobehavioral deficits that, by the end of the 2 weeks, were equivalent to those of someone who had been awake for 24 hours straight. And here's the part that matters: participants who were chronically sleep restricted systematically underestimated how impaired they were. They didn't feel as bad as they were performing. So, sustained attention, the kind required for focused reading, deep work, careful thinking, is one of the first cognitive functions to suffer under sleep restriction. You cannot train your attention span effectively if you are chronically sleeping less than 7 hours. The training gains will be overwhelmed by the deficit you are accumulating every night. So, the recommendation across the sleep literature is 7 to 8 hours for most adults. So, this is not a wellness suggestion. It is the minimum maintenance dose for the cognitive system you are trying to improve. Fix number 4: aerobic exercise and nature for recovery. Two more levels, both with solid evidence behind them. In 2008, Charles Hillman, Kirk Erikson, and Arthur Kramer published a review in Nature Reviews of Neuroscience titled "Be Smart, Exercise Your Heart." Their conclusion, drawn from multiple human and animal studies, was that aerobic exercise, the kind that raises your heart rate and keeps it elevated, directly promotes new brain connections. That increases availability of key neurotrophic factors like BDNF, reduces stress hormones, and improves cognitive performance, including attentional control. So, the recommended dose from the broader literature aligns with standard public health guidance: 150 minutes of moderate aerobic activity per week. This isn't about fitness, it's about maintaining the biological substrate that makes sustained cognition possible. The second recovery tool is nature, and this might be the most underused. Stephen Kaplan's attention restoration theory, developed in a 1995 paper in the Journal of Environmental Psychology, makes a precise and testable claim. Natural environments, parks, walking paths, anything with vegetation, water, or open sky, engage what Kaplan calls involuntary attention. The effortless pull you feel toward a river or a canopy of trees, because this kind of attention requires no effort and no inhibition of competing stimuli. It allows your directed attention, the effortful kind that's been depleted by focused work, to recover passively. Mark Berman and colleagues extended this in a 2008 study in the journal Psychological Science, showing that a 50-minute walk in a natural environment improved performance on an attention task more than a 50-minute walk in an urban environment. Not because nature is magical, because it doesn't demand directed attention the same way a city does. The practical implication here is, if you need a break from deep work, a walk in a park does more for your attention recovery than scrolling your phone, checking email, or watching short form video. Those activities don't allow recovery. They continue to tax the same attentional system you're trying to rest. So let me pull this all together. Your attention isn't broken, but it is operating in an environment that was designed to fragment it. And it has been doing so for long enough that many people have lost the baseline experience of sustained focus. The research points to 4 concrete levers: phone out of the room and email in batches. These are environmental restructuring, not willpower. Mindfulness training, specifically the monitored structured kind. This builds the capacity directly. Sleep at 7 hours minimum. This is maintenance. And aerobic exercise plus time in nature. These are recovery. None of this requires a productivity system. None of it requires you to be a different kind of person. These are specific, evidence-backed adjustments to how you use your environment and your body. I'll say the uncomfortable thing directly. The attention span problem is real and it's getting worse, but it is not irreversible. The brain is plastic. The capacity for sustained focus can be rebuilt. It just requires treating it like the trainable system it actually is, instead of the personality trait it isn't. If this was useful, tell me in the comments which of the 4 fixes you're going to try first. And subscribe if you want more of this. Thanks for watching.